I'd like to start by introducing someone you may recognise or something. Planet Earth. Over the last 4.5 billion years, it's hosted some truly astounding civil engineers. To this day, we still look back and wonder at things like Egyptian pyramids and Roman roads. And if we focus on the last 200 years, they've largely been dominated by ICE members. Our Victorian counterparts built a real legacy of canals, railways and bridges. They not only revolutionised society, but truly changed the way we live. However, whilst our Victorian counterparts undoubtedly improved our quality of life, they also left us with some great challenges. Our transport networks and energy grid are completely reliant on finite resources like oil, coal, and as for this, concrete is now the second most widely consumed resource on our planet. It's a bit of stone, some cement, and yet the only thing we use more of is water. These methods and materials are not sustainable, and the consequences are quite clear. Our planet's temperature is rising and habitats and species are decreasing. Many people still lack basic resources like drinking water. However, it's not all doom and gloom. I believe that today's civil engineers have our planet's future in our hands. I believe that we too can build a legacy, but it cannot be based on building more or bigger. It must instead be smarter and greener. Development must be sustainable. I'd like to introduce the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If we look at these, they have the flagship aim of eradicating poverty by 2030. But if we delve a little deeper, we quickly see that this cannot be achieved without civil engineers. For example, we see that Goal 6 is clean water and sanitation. Goal 9 looks at infrastructure. Goal 13 looks at climate action. These are not just third world problems, these are issues for all of us in our day-to-day lives. So here's the important bit. I believe that there are very few professions with the ability to have such a profound impact on our planet's future. There are very few professions with the knowledge and expertise to influence these goals so widely, and there are very few professions with our enthusiasm and problem-solving mentality. So that's all very well, I hear you say, but what can we do? Where can we start? Well, how many of us have heard about these goals? How many of our friends and family have heard of them? We can all start by shouting about them and raising awareness. We can all judge our projects on the environmental impacts, as well as the traditional mantra of time and cost. We can all embrace new technology so that anyone describing our legacy uses something a little more exciting than things I found in my dad's shed last night. So in summary, I hope that my whirlwind tour of the past, the present and the future has shown you all what an exciting time it is to be a civil engineer. I hope I've shown that by combining our great profession with the UN's goals, we can build a sustainable legacy. Thank you.
Always flatter your audience. First rule. 200 years pretty much dominated by ICE members.
Absolutely.
Phil, we're going to ask you some questions. We'll just have a couple of them. I'm not sure who wants to lead off on any questions before Alex amongst the judges. Anne, does anything come to mind? Or John, I'll start at this end of the table.
Which of the development goals would you start with?
I think the climate action is probably the most important. But then if you look at all the ones that we can feed into, you know, even in a hugely developed country, things like affordable housing come under these goals. These aren't just issues for others, these are issues here at home as well as abroad. But yeah, probably personally, climate action.
How do you persuade people to consume less?
I think persuading people is a really interesting argument for civil engineers. Often, perhaps what we do is, I said about building more and bigger, but maybe it should be trying to influence how people use what we build. You know, for example, things like road user charging is hugely controversial. Politically, it's a bit of a nightmare. But actually, we build roads for, you know, small peak hours, and yet if we could persuade people to use things differently, you know, it's not necessarily using something less, but if we just used it differently, then we would reduce those peak volumes that we're often designing for.
Joanna?
Do you think engineers should get more involved in politics and policy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe in the future, maybe in 2030, it shouldn't be us as civil engineers that are having to tell people how widely we can influence these goals. If people really knew what we did, I think that the conversation would be reversed, but people would be coming to us and saying, you know, we've got these things we want to do. We want to ensure that everyone has clean water, that everyone has sanitation. Who do we go to? It's civil engineers. It shouldn't be us having to explain that, but maybe in the past we've not been great at explaining what we do.
Alex, thanks very much. Take a seat, ladies and gentlemen. Alex.
Thank you. Thank you.